Hurricane Eta's rain and wind. The bridge is closed. Winds are gusting close to 50 miles per hour, so too strong to have traffic over that bridge. And by the way, speaking of traffic, air traffic, well, yeah, Tampa International Airport slated to close today at 3 p.m. and not scheduled to reopen until tomorrow at noon. And I'm pretty sure there are probably major delays right now with weather conditions like that, all because of Eta coming in. So definitely impacts already being felt up and down the west coast of Florida. Let's bring in our hurricane specialist, Dr. Greg Postel, on this Veterans Day. And Dr. Postel, yes, we have a concern with flash flooding, with storm surge, but also severe weather when you have these systems approach land.
Yeah, I mean, it's those rain bands that are moving in that are bringing those very squally conditions in Florida. And Tampa, can we go back to that and have a look at that real quick? Or let's get to okay, let me show you here what we've got. There's that band of squall right now that is moving through parts of Florida. Punta Gorda is gusting to 60 miles per hour. As I said, expect wind gusts over 60 in some of those heavier rain bands. And the bottom right, there is your Skyway Bridge, Tampa. 75 degrees right now, zero visibility. This is the kind of weather. And let's get to that tornado warning right now, where we've got a tornado warning for Manatee and Sarasota counties. That does include Bayshore Gardens, Bradenton, and South Bradenton. This is a radar indicated rotation. This storm is moving toward the northwest at 50 miles per hour. So if you get a tornado warning, react immediately. Find an interior room, as many walls between you and the outside as possible, away from windows, lowest floor. There is very little time to deal with these warnings. They'll pop up, and you need to react immediately because these storms are moving so fast, and you won't see them because of the very heavy rain. And as you can see on the bottom right part of your screen, practically zero visibility with the exceptionally heavy rain moving through. Again, this is a tornado warning for Manatee and Sarasota counties that goes for another half an hour. We'll see how long it lasts. But again, if you hear a warning in your area, take shelter immediately. This is what we've got on the satellite pictures. There is the center of circulation, really not attended by bad weather along the center and to the west. Lots of clear skies. Most of the nasty stuff is out here, which is what is exactly moving in to parts of western Florida. And you saw that with some of the observations that we just mentioned. This is what we've got on the satellite pictures right now. There is basically not many tall thunderstorms with it left. Yes, there are some here on the edge in Florida, but even overall, we're looking at a satellite presentation that is significantly degraded from what it was even 12 hours ago. Extremely dry air surrounds Eta right now. This is now moving all the way into the interior. This is what is going to be likely associated with the continuation of its weakening overall. But reminder, a weakening tropical system can still bring very bad weather, and it will. And we're watching that right now still move across parts of Florida. The likely track moves it northeastward relatively quickly, and you can see that across parts of North Florida, with the center likely passing through tomorrow. Anywhere from Spring Hill, Cedar Key, all the way through Jacksonville, maybe even Ponte Vedra, maybe farther north, Amelia Island potentially. But remember, most of the bad weather will probably come and precede where the center goes. So once it moves on by, drier, much better weather moves in, and the winds begin to relax. And overall, we can look forward to that, especially during the day tomorrow. Paul.
All right, thanks, Dr. Postel. Again, right now, Hurricane Eta is still moving towards Florida here, bringing a lot of impacts as well. Eta is going to bring water in two forms across parts of Florida. One is the heavy rain, as well as we still have the concern of water being pushed in from the Gulf and even the Bay as well. So we're talking about storm surge. It's also a good concern. Here's a live look at Sanibel Island, Florida. Winds gusting to 34 miles per hour, sustained around 25. And look at the temperatures, upper 70s. This is a tropical air mass, hence all the potential rain we could have across this area. And not to mention the flooding rain, we have storm surge, 2 to 4 feet. Wouldn't be surprised to see even higher amounts as well. I want to kind of zoom on in towards that area there in southwest Florida that we've been dealing with some of this heavy rain. Not to mention that tornado warning coming on through there. Just nothing but inundated with heavy rain. Again, Manatee and Sarasota counties under a tornado warning right now till 12:30 local time. Another 27 minutes on that warning time. And in those red and yellow areas, orange areas, we're seeing some of the most intense winds, 40, 50, 60 plus mile per hour wind gusts cannot be ruled out in this area. That's why they also closed the Skyway Bridge there. And this warning extends the southern footing of that bridge there in Manatee County and Sarasota County. Let's put our radar in forecast mode here. You can see the bands of rain kind of spiral on in. This is crucial, the timing of this, because we have a couple of high tides. One just passed, another one coming up at 11 o'clock tonight. Even the low tide coming up at 5 o'clock tonight is not going to be that low. The winds won't allow that water to fully drain the bay here. I think back to 3 years ago with Hurricane Irma, how we had a big push, offshore push of that water draining the bay. But guess what? That water, it has to slosh back. It's going to slosh back throughout the day tomorrow, and then definitely higher than normal high tides and low tides across the region as those winds come onshore throughout the day on Thursday. And that center is gone. The center's in the Atlantic, but we're still having impacts all around the Tampa Bay area. Heavy rain happening now and will continue through tomorrow. Having some isolated spots, seeing 3 to 6 inches of rain, not out of the woods at all. We're definitely going to concern ourselves with more rain pushing even farther north into the Carolinas. Dr. Postel?
Yeah, Paul, we have to talk about the severe weather that is now coming into parts of Florida. We have a tornado warning for areas just south of Tampa on one of the outer rain bands of Eta. Just for bigger picture's sake, there is where that tornado warning is, that little red box. And I'm going to zoom in and show you the areas that are going to be impacted by this line of very heavy showers and thunderstorms that has embedded within it some possibility of tornadoes. Now, we don't have any confirmation of that, but the radar is scanning inside of this line and finding some pretty strong rotation here and there, and that's why the tornado warning does include Manatee and Sarasota counties until 12:30 Eastern time, so about another 25 minutes or so. This line of showers and storms is moving north and northwest at about 50 miles per hour, and that is a remarkable speed when you consider the fact that we're going to be dealing with this bad weather move in so very quickly and then move away very quickly. So if you get the warning, the bottom line is take shelter immediately. Lowest floor, as many walls between you and the outside as possible, and away from windows. There may not be a whole lot of time to react to this kind of tornado warning because it's moving so fast and there's so much rain you might not be able to see it coming. So please take shelter if you get that warning immediately. The rest of Florida and many other areas nearby, not just now, but for most of today and probably tomorrow morning, we'll see some gusty winds from time to time, no doubt about that. This is a model that's trying to give you an idea of the kind of wind gusts you could expect. We may see in Tampa this afternoon, later on, and tonight, maybe some wind gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour. We're probably already starting to approach that now. And then as we head toward tomorrow afternoon, the weather conditions do improve significantly as Eta moves away into the Atlantic, and Florida will be in a better place, I think, by tomorrow. But until then, reminder, a tornado watch is in place. It does include Tampa and Sarasota. So even if you don't have a warning now and you are in this tornado watch, note that the conditions are favorable for the possibility of tornadoes throughout much of the afternoon, and be prepared to act accordingly if you indeed do get a warning. Paul.
All right, thanks, Dr. Postel. Let's take you live into Naples, Florida right now by that pier, and there are a few brave souls perhaps trying to catch some waves here, but the wind's not exactly cooperating either. The waves, they're kind of drifting kind of from south west to northeast along the beaches there. Not the ideal flow coming on there, but you're seeing kind of a break in some of the heavier rain here in Naples, but be prepared. You too are in that tornado watch area through 5 o'clock this evening. Not to mention the tropical storm warning. So a lot of people try to jump out there. Whoa, a break in the rain. Everything's over. No, it's not over. So there's the radar right now showing a kind of break in the rain. But see some of those other bands coming in from the Gulf will be strafing that area of southwest Florida. So be prepared for changing weather conditions. This is where the center's going. But we know weather, and hopefully we know by this time, weather is not confined just to that center. We're seeing a lot of wind and weather on the east side of that center. And that's what's coming, or it's already gone through Naples, at least some bands. We have more to come. That's what's coming through Tampa right now and into St. Petersburg and Clearwater and Bradenton, all getting inundated. We'll see this continue as we head out the evening. So what we're experiencing now, we could see another couple of waves of that type of intense rain and low visibility throughout the rest of this afternoon into tonight. Landfall perhaps after midnight up towards the nature coast there, and that center continues to move away. But now the winds come on. They still come on shore now. It's a big concern with storm surge tomorrow. The rain might be ending, the sun might be shining, but the storm surge and the winds still howling in from the Gulf. So flash flooding, not to mention coastal flooding, storm surge flooding, all a big concern. Look at the winds here. Gusty, but they move coming from the south to due south tomorrow morning. So huge amounts of storm surge even in Tampa Bay. The south-facing beaches in the city of Tampa on the bay side could see a huge push of water even after that rain has left us, and the center is off the Atlantic right now. And then even overnight, the winds come in from the west, so now the Gulf is pushing onshore, giving us more concerns as well. So still a big concern. But anytime you have issues around Tampa, it's a big concern. It's been a year since that city's been impacted directly by a major hurricane. We're not expecting this to be a major hurricane at all here as it impacts Florida, but still a big concern across the region. Now, Eta dumping heavy rain all across Florida. Take a look at what it's done in Fort Lauderdale. We're talking heavy rain before Eta came through. We're running a big surplus, almost 22 inches of rain there. Then we had 8+ inches from Eta. Surplus now closing in on 29 inches of rain. And as Jen Carfagno shows us, people who live in one hard-hit neighborhood of Fort Lauderdale struggling with these damp days following Eta.
Getting to work can mean getting wet.
I have 18 inches of water all the way around my house. I can't even move my truck.
The Melrose Park neighborhood, a working class area of Fort Lauderdale, underwater. 80-year-old Evelyn Henry has lived in Melrose Park 3 decades. Eta pushing knee-deep floodwaters inside her house.
3 weeks ago, it was flooded, the water up to the door, but it didn't come inside the house like it is today.
The city deploying an army of vacuum trucks to suck up floodwaters and haul them away. But they did little to clear streets. Uber Eats driver Harmony Peterson can't deliver food. Her small sedan can't handle the high water.
It was good yesterday like it's good now, but then it started pouring again overnight, and you just can't call it.
Standing water, damaging vehicles. Marky White making repairs.
Water get in between electrical stuff, car won't start, jam engine, So I'm here as a rescue team right now.
8 inches of rain there in Fort Lauderdale. Miami picked up almost 6 inches of rain. You too running a huge surplus, now even bigger for the year here. Take a look at the numbers. Getting a lot of superlatives coming out of not only Eta but also the entire hurricane season. So more heavy rain has fallen across South Florida. Getting a break right now, but the soil moisture is so high and so saturated, won't take that much. Hence the flash flood watches or flood watches still issued across South Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward counties. Soil moisture is high. We could use some rain across kind of north central Florida, and that's where it's going to be. But South Florida, we're not done in terms of the rain. Enjoy the dry time now. As we head late tonight, we can see some of those bands and that push of tropical moisture come back into South Florida, especially into tomorrow morning. So we're not quite done with this tropical flow, giving us the potential for more flooding. The good news is this weekend looks drier. We got to get through tonight and tomorrow and into early Friday in Miami for the potential of more heavy rain, more flooding. Fort Myers, more rain for you today, tomorrow, and into Friday. This moisture, though, pushing northward, Dr. Postel.
Paul, it is, and that is going to be a problem for many of us, I think, in South Carolina, North Carolina, and even farther north into Virginia, with a lot of rain over the next couple of days coming, in part, believe it or not, associated with Eta. Even though it won't be directly close by, it will have an impact on bringing additional rains to the region. We've got flood watches, flash flood watches out as well for many areas across parts of the mid-Atlantic, and that is something to think about if you're out traveling and you're driving and the road ahead is covered with water. We always say, turn around, don't drown. You never know how deep that water is. Be very careful, please. We've got a frontal zone here. That's going to be one of the main foci, I should say, for the likelihood of significant rainfall. The colors here in yellow tell us that the atmosphere is very moist. So when you've got a frontal zone, one of the triggers, and you've got another trigger here and one there, each of which is bringing in a lot of moisture toward that frontal zone, well, you can get that where the atmosphere is moist and you got everything coming in at it from all different directions. You're going to wring out a lot of this in the form of heavy rain all the way from Florida through the mid-Atlantic. And it's not going to rain every hour of the entire day. But in these areas in green today and tomorrow, expect more rain, I think, than not rain, and do expect when it does rain, expect heavy downpours because the atmosphere is, I said, extremely moist along the way. A lot of rain over the next 2 days, 3 to 5 inches in some spots, 5 to 8 in others, going all the way up to parts of Maryland and Delaware. Now, we also have breaking news right now. We've got a tornado warning for parts of western Florida, very close to the Tampa Bay area. There is that sort of red box, and you can see that is the tornado warning for Manatee and Sarasota counties for about another 15 minutes as this storm moves rapidly to the northwest at about 50 miles per hour. If you get the tornado warning, head to shelter immediately.
Sharing
This record-breaking hurricane season isn't over. The threat from Eta is still complex and dangerous to the southeast.
Big rainfall stretching from Miami all the way over to the west coast of Florida.
No one can cover this historic hurricane season better than the Weather Channel. Get the information you need to stay safe all week long, right here on the Weather Channel.
Welcome back to Weather Center Live, and Hurricane Eta continues to close in on Florida's west coast right now. This is a shot at Key West, 81 degrees, where the winds are gusting over 30 miles per hour. This is a long way from not only where the center of Eta is, which is still about 120 miles southwest of Tampa, but it is also kind of pretty far away from where the worst weather is with Eta. So that's an interesting picture, and people are standing there taking pictures of the waves and standing in the wind. But far away from there, we are seeing a line of thunderstorms and showers move inland now into parts of Florida. And with that, do expect wind gusts in some places over 60 miles per hour locally, and that threat for tornadoes does continue. We've seen some tornado warnings already, with especially this line, this arcing line of showers that's moving northwestward. But do expect maybe more later on today. The center is about here. And again, there are more bands of rain and thunderstorms to move on in. So just because this band is moved through doesn't mean it's over. We're going to have kind of a busy afternoon, I think, from time to time. In between those bands, the weather not so bad, but when those rain showers move in, do expect some pretty strong wind gusts. Right now, gusting to 48 in Sarasota. And a reminder, we actually had a wind gust just a little while ago in Punta Gorda at 60 miles per hour. Even though the average wind was about 20 to 30, a rain shower comes in and it gets really bad for a short period of time, Paul. That's the kind of squally conditions to expect across parts of Florida today.
Yeah, widespread impact still well away from the center. Thanks, Dr. Postel. Well, Florida now is set for its second landfall of the 2020 hurricane season from the same system. Talking about Eta, made landfall first in the Keys this past weekend. Let's bring in Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, joins us this morning from Tallahassee. Governor, thanks for talking to us this morning. First of all, you guys have been fairly lucky so far this hurricane season, but now we can't escape Eta and its impact here. Heavy rain and flooding in South Florida. What's your word of caution to residents on the west coast of Florida who are already feeling impacts as we expect landfall later on tonight?
Well, we want them to exercise caution. As you mentioned, there are wind gusts that are very strong, could even reach hurricane force. We also anticipate, we're already seeing in southwest Florida, some of the storm surge and the rising water levels. So people need to be on the lookout for flash flooding. Don't be venturing out into big areas of water. You could have power lines down. You're also looking at a landfall now, potentially north of Tampa Bay area and the Hernando County region. Even a tropical storm will likely lead to vegetation and some other things with trees. So that's going to be an issue as well. We have not had major power outages yet, but we obviously think that that is going to happen. It may not be massive outages in any one spot, but it's going to be over a large portion of that west coast where there'll probably be some. So we're working hard to have supplies in there as soon as it's safe. And then we're also working with the utilities to make sure that they're in to be able to get the restoration. If you look at, I mean, you guys have been following this track. It's really been a crazy storm to watch. Yesterday morning when I got briefed, it was looking at a northern Gulf Coast impact in the Pensacola, Alabama, Mississippi region. And then obviously that's gotten revised now. We're looking at north of Tampa Bay. So folks are prepared. There are not any massive evacuations been ordered, but in some of the local communities, some low-lying areas in Manatee County and Hernando County, you are seeing voluntary evacuations. Not a lot of shelters have needed to be open yet, but if those are, we're obviously there to be able to help with any types of supplies that they need.
And the Tampa Bay area very vulnerable to storm surge. We remember the pictures from Pensacola back during Hurricane Sally, the storm surge that devastated parts of that community. What's your concern about some of the Bay areas there in Tampa with this forecast of storm surge of 3 to 5 feet?
Yeah, no, it's a big concern. As you say, that's one of the most vulnerable areas in the state of Florida. And when we war game hurricane scenarios, that's usually a Category 5 going. There's kind of the worst case that we think the state could have. So I think it's definitely something that folks should be looking at in that area, preparing for. We obviously will be there to help in the aftermath if they need some of the pumps or other things to help deal with it. But you should definitely be prepared. If you're on that Gulf Coast in west central Florida, we are going to see water rise, probably already seeing it in that area, but that'll continue to happen throughout the day.
And something we'll monitor all day here in the Weather Channel as well. Thank you so much. That is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Thank you so much for your time, and best wishes to the people here in Florida dealing with the impacts of Eta. And again, right now we're still watching another impact with Eta, which is the severe weather. Dr. Bush, tell us more on that.
Yeah, we've got severe weather now again in the Tampa area. Let's zoom in. This is the area for reference that we're talking about. One of these outer rain bands of Eta is moving through very quickly. We've got a new tornado warning out for Pinellas County, Florida. Goes until 12:45 Eastern time, so about another 20 minutes. Again, this line of showers and thunderstorms is moving northwestward at about 50 miles per hour, and a new tornado warning, including Ruskin, just popped up. We'll be right back with all of this. Stay tuned. Continues as we speak in and around the Tampa area. Those red boxes each indicate a tornado warning, meaning the possibility of a tornado in progress. These are radar indicated circulations. The first tornado warning out for Pinellas County goes for about another 15 minutes. For your issued for your particular location, take shelter right away. These storms are moving very quickly and accompanied by a lot of rain, and therefore very difficult to see. A new tornado warning is also now issued for Hillsborough and Manatee counties in Florida for Apollo Beach Parish. Roughly this same arc of showers and thunderstorms continues to roll northward very quickly across the western Florida shores, and we're going to be watching this line of rain move northward through as extend outward about like that. Now, with the wind gusts sort of overall, we're seeing 30 to 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts when those heavier showers move through. Punta Gorda measured just a little while ago a 60 mile per hour day. That's the best way to describe it, with the center of Eta still about 100 miles to the south-southwest of Tampa, Florida, right about there. Now, the weather right around the center, especially to the west side of it, right now is not that bad. And we're watching this track basically move north-northeast for now. So it looks like that the center will probably pass to the west of Tampa by a good distance and continue on its northward track. But remember, this is east side loaded, so bad weather is mostly over here impacting Tampa and much of the surrounding areas in western Florida. So that is something to consider. Don't follow where the center goes necessarily, because this time in particular, the vast majority of the bad weather is on the right or east side of the center. The reason why it's asymmetric like that is because dry air has for now a while wrapped itself all the way into the interior of this thing. And so this is one of the reasons why I expect a continuation of that sort of profile, and also a likely continuation in the weakening trends that we do see in the satellite and radar. It will likely come ashore as a tropical storm, bringing with it very significant weather. The tornado threat continues today and probably this evening as well. Very heavy rain and squally gusty winds in excess of 60 in some places. But the good news is, Paul, is that as it moves northeastward, it will begin to accelerate, carry the bad weather with it. Better weather by a long shot arrives tomorrow.
Well, right now we're seeing that heavy rain on the west coast of Florida, but the South Florida not out of the woods in terms of more rain and more impacts from the system. You take a look, I'm going to circle it here, the flood watches issued for parts of South Florida. That's because of all the rain we did pick up with Eta over the weekend and into this week, as well as everything out towards the west coast. Big concern. There's our big swaths of rain, but notice how even though we don't see that center coming on through South Florida, that's where the center is probably going to go, we're still seeing the potential for maybe a couple of inches of rain here in South Florida after all the heavy rain as well. But take a look at the winds here, also helping to have coastal impacts and bayside impacts. Throughout the day, we have a strong southerly impact of the wind, meaning parts of Tampa Bay. We are going to see bayside storm surge. This wind will physically take the water and lift it up and onshore there on the south-facing beaches there in Tampa Bay. And later on tonight, the winds shift into tomorrow morning more from the west. So now we're going to see the winds coming in from the Gulf, impacting some of the western and southwest-facing beaches. That will continue throughout much of tomorrow as well. Look at the winds, still gusty everywhere here across Florida, right until late tomorrow, where the winds finally start to go light. But already seeing a rise in the storm surge, the water already coming up here in Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, over a foot above average. And we still have high tide coming up again tonight, low tide this afternoon around 5 o'clock or so. But already a 3 to 5 foot storm surge. That's been upgraded to 2 to 4 feet over the last couple of hours here, as we have that strong winds already slamming the area. Numerous tornado warnings already. We have a 2 to 3 on the Torcons here across western, southwestern Florida, even extending out towards the Space Coast as well. And we have a tornado watch. This one goes until 5 o'clock this afternoon. Would not be surprised at all to see this extending and even pushing farther north and eastward as we head throughout the rest of today and tonight. Right, live look at why we're concerned here with Tampa. A Sunshine Bridge? No, it's other parts of Tampa. Heavy rain still coming on through here. Winds have been gusting well over 40 miles per hour and will continue throughout the day.
Welcome back to Weather Center Live. Severe weather is in progress now across parts of Florida. You can see a couple of those red areas near Tampa, those boxes. Those are indeed tornado warnings associated with this outer band here of Eta, which is now closing in on Florida. Let's have a zoomed in view of what's going on in and around the Tampa area. We've got a tornado warning out for Pinellas County until 12:45. That is included also areas of Largo, Leelman, and Pinellas Park. These showers are moving very quickly toward the northwest at about 50 miles per hour. Not much time to react. If you get a warning, take shelter immediately if you can. Lowest floor of a building, as many walls between you and the outside as possible, away from windows. These storms are moving very, very quickly. And even if they're not containing a tornado, this area of showers is producing very gusty winds regardless that could still do some damage. Here's the other tornado warning out just to the southeast of there. This does include Hillsborough and Manatee counties, also until 12:45. So do expect this kind of tornado threat to continue. Now, we can play this out a little bit, and I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to sort of show you the areas that need to be considered down the line for the possibility of tornado risk. That would include areas to the north and east of there. So just because we've got these areas outlined with that tornado warning right now, we have to consider what's happening in the next hour or two as that rain shower activity continues to move on toward the north and northeast. Overall, we are dealing with Eta still rolling around in the Gulf of Mexico, well offshore, about 100 miles southwest of Tampa, bringing in some very gusty winds from time to time with those heavier showers. We already saw wind gusts of 60 miles per hour at Punta Gorda. 40 to 50 is very common with the heaviest rain bands. Tornado watch continues until 5 o'clock this evening, and we may see another tornado watch in areas farther to the north and east. Don't have that out now, but you know, as Eta continues to move toward the northeast, it will bring with it all of the weather it's got now to those new areas farther to the north and east. Paul.
Thanks, Dr. Postel. Well, on this Veterans Day, we want to honor those men and women who have served this country and done their part with the military, who are now doing their part to help in another effort, that's disaster relief with Team Rubicon. This year, the Gulf Coast has been hit hard by several hurricanes. We went back to Lake Charles, Louisiana, with the men and women known as the Gray Shirts to learn about their mission.
My name is Shane Fruge. This is our family home. This is the remnants of what's left from the last 4 or 5 major hurricanes.
It's been months since Hurricanes Laura and Delta tore through Lake Charles, Louisiana, and homeowners like Shane are still dealing with the piles of debris and damage left behind. Volunteer organization Team Rubicon seeks to help residents just like these with their teams of mostly military veteran volunteers who are looking to offer a little relief.
I think a lot of veterans, they lose that closeness to their teammates, their coworkers, and everything they had. And when they separate and get out, they kind of feel that they don't belong anymore.
Team Rubicon gives these veterans a way to reconnect.
Although I am still serving and stuff, I've got the first responders that are also with us and the civilians, and we all integrate together and leverage each other's expertise.
Because we said we were going to do it from the ladder.
They call their volunteers Gray Shirts, and they aren't known by their rank, just their first names.
Service comes up, rank almost never does.
With many volunteers having a military background, they are uniquely prepared for this type of work, even if they don't know how to operate a chainsaw or tarp a roof.
When they come to communities like this, they're really able to dig in and help communities that are impacted on their worst days because they already have that sense of service and that sense of selflessness.
Many are regulars with Team Rubicon, and some are relatively new, like Mike, who just retired from 29 years in law enforcement.
Being on the job so long, it's great to be a new guy again. It's fun to be starting over and learning stuff that I had no knowledge about.
Offering help to those in need has its benefits, not just for the residents, but for the veterans as well.
Tacking it down, rolling it down.
They've really gained that sense of purpose and that sense of community again, and then they stick. You know, that's why we have, growing numbers in our organization, and we're able to continue to recruit and to grow our force so that we can help communities.
Many volunteers say the hardest part isn't doing the labor, it's having to leave with so much work left to be done.
A lot of Gray Shirts that I know tend to come right back, and they'll go for a week, they'll go home for a week, they'll come back to that site.
I couldn't think of a better way to keep that sense of service and purpose going once you're out of the military, once you're no longer in a first responder, than doing something like Team Rubicon.
And they come in to help. That says a lot. That says they're still good people.
Great work they're doing, and happy Veterans Day, everyone. Right now, we're still watching more impacts, this time on the west coast of Florida. We've had tornado warnings been issued multiple times this morning. Now, another one we're watching for Hillsborough and Manatee County here. And these cells are kind of racing on towards the north around 30 miles per hour. And so, again, more storms into St. Petersburg as well.
You're watching America's most trusted TV news network,
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
the Weather Channel.
Welcome back to Weather Center Live. We are now dealing with the outer rain bands of Hurricane Eta affecting parts of Florida, bringing with gusty winds, very heavy rain, and even the threat of tornadoes. There's that little red box in and around the Tampa area. We've seen a bunch of those in the last hour. Those are tornado warnings issued by the National Weather Service. And right now, we still have one in effect for Pinellas counties until 1 o'clock, about another 10 minutes, as an area of very heavy rain with embedded rotation in it. Maybe radar indicated a tornado. We don't have confirmation of that, but there is a possibility that any one of these showers could produce a tornado very quickly with little or no advance warning. The bulk of them are moving toward the northwest at 30 to 50 miles per hour, moving so quickly with a lot of rain around, poor visibility. If you get a warning, the bottom line is take shelter immediately if you can, because you might not have a whole lot of time to react. Everything is moving so fast. Again, once again, this tornado warning does include Pinellas County. For Clearwater and Largo are some of the cities included. That will go for about another 10 more minutes. Don't be surprised if there are more tornado warnings coming up. We're still seeing this very same rain band arc its way north and northeastward through western Florida. So just be prepared. If you live in Lakeland, Lake Wales, Zephyrhills, or anywhere in between and areas to the north of there, the weather today will likely only get worse. Overall, in the big picture, the center of Eta is right about there. It is really about only half a storm when you look at it in terms of rainfall. That's about the dividing line. Most of the bad weather in terms of rainfall is on the east side or right side of it. That is because a lot of dry air has come into the system and really done a lot of damage to it. That's good news. It is on a weakening trend. But still, we are dealing with very gusty winds along the coast in some of those rain bands. And there's another rain band about ready to come in and another one behind that. Each of those could contain wind gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour and a tornado threat as well as they roll on in. This is the weakening trend that I'm talking about. When you look at the satellite pictures, there's not really a whole lot left in the core, or what was once the core of Eta. There's some thunderstorms there, but this is really taking a beating, and that's good news, that it does appear that Eta is now on its final weakening trend. But again, I'll step back one more moment from that and say a weakening trend of Eta still will bring some bad weather in terms of flooding, coastal storm flooding from storm surge, also gusty winds and a tornado threat, even that goes into tomorrow morning in the northeastern part of the state. Paul.
Well, thanks, Dr. Postel. But Eta is not the only game in town. We're also watching Theta and eventually the next system that could be named Iota. Yeah, going deep back in your college history and your Greek alphabet here. Let's talk about everything, starting with what's going on here in the eastern Pacific. That is Tropical Storm Theta, formerly Subtropical Storm Theta, taking on more tropical characteristics. It's forecast to remain a tropical storm as it pushes eastward towards the northwest coast of Africa, maybe even Western Europe, and eventually heading on towards the Canary Islands and even the Madeira Islands as well as we head on through this weekend and into next week. Then a little closer to home, take a look at what's happening right now across the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. This is BVI as well. Heavy rain moving on through the area. 3 to 5 inches of rain has already fallen. We're talking hundreds of thousands of Americans being impacted by this disturbed area of weather, which could probably form. In fact, we still have flash flood warnings going on in parts of Arroyo Cuyama as well as Patelis as well, as also parts of Vieques seeing some very heavy rain. Now, this area has now an 80% chance of developing. Flood watches are up because of the fact that we've seen so much heavy rain, still dealing with this. But this area, National Hurricane Center has an 80% chance of developing over the next 5 days as it pushes farther west. This is a concern. We've had some heavy rain in Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, more rain headed your way, as well as Central America. You know, needing more rain, got a couple of feet there. We could see more rain this weekend from this area. Dr. Bostel?
Yeah, Paul, we're still dealing with the tornado threat on the edge of Eta in now multiple places across parts of Florida as we speak. These bands that are moving through, each of them contain that tornado risk. And we've got a couple of tornado warnings out issued by the National Weather Service. Let's go through them one by one. If you get the tornado warning, react immediately, please, because these are moving very quickly, accompanied by a lot of heavy rain and also poor visibility. So you won't be able to see what may or may not be coming your way. So again, lowest floor, interior room, as many walls between you and the outside as possible and away from windows. There's another warning for Pinellas and Hillsborough County until 1:15, and there's another one in South Florida on the outer edge of Eta in one of these outer arcing rain bands. This is what we're going to see a lot of today. So even in areas that right now don't have that tornado warning, this band of rain that is yet to come on shore, this band of rain, as they close in on the coast, do expect very gusty winds at times and also a continued tornado threat throughout the afternoon. We'll be right back with all coverage on Eta.
At the home. Breaking for us now as we continue to track what's going on with Eta as it's bringing a severe risk to parts of Florida. And oftentimes you get these tropical systems making their way close to shore. Well, in those outer bands, you deal with that opportunity for tornadoes to spin up. So let's talk about a few of these here. There's the center of the circulation there, offshore, off the west coast of Florida. You can see all the rain bands that continue to stream on in, heavy downpours here and there. But then we see some of these warnings firing up as well. There's a couple of them at this time. We'll detail a few of them. It's getting a little bit tighter here, just north of the 75 corridor here, Alligator Alley, Broward, Collier, and Hendry counties until 1:15. That's for this storm here, which is moving northbound at about 35 miles per hour. That's generally the speed. Most of these are moving 30, 35, close to 40 miles per hour, generally on off towards the north. So again, just north of Interstate 75, we do have a tornado warning for Broward, Collier, and Hendry counties. We'll keep a track on that. If you're in any of those areas here in those counties, certainly making sure you're getting to your safe zone away from those windows in a low floor and again, a sturdy structure. All right, we move north and westbound, and this is closer towards the Tampa area. Hillsborough and Pinellas counties here until 1:15. That's this area here. Tornado warning is in effect there as well. And then as we slide just on off towards the west, another warning that is in place. If you look at the velocity here, we can actually see what's going on. There's actually this warning here. You can pick out two areas of rotation that were showing up. Those have now moved just offshore. Harder to tell. This one here looks like right in there. So the rotation is showing up there. And in fact, now just newly issued tornado warning right into this area where the rotation is showing up the best right now, just to the north and east of Gandy for us. So that now does include, again, parts of Hillsborough and Pinellas counties until looks like 12:59. Looks like that warning is in place there. All right, we move our way westbound. Again, there's Clearwater and Largo. Storms have moved on through. Again, the storms that showed the rotation, we had, again, two areas of rotation. That's moved just offshore. So, again, those warnings here until 1 o'clock. We'll see if those will continue here as we work our way through the next minute or so. But nonetheless, we've certainly seen a lot of activity here with these storms rolling on by and producing some of these isolated tornadoes, at least that potential here for us, that possibility existing in a number of these areas, all outlined in this red. That's where we have that risk from Tampa all the way down on 75 with that risk for, again, some isolated tornadoes that'll be in place for us. Until 5 o'clock, that tornado watch is in effect. So again, through this afternoon, through the next several hours, anywhere you see that red showing up, that's where we have the potential for tornadoes to spin up. Now, they tend to be brief. They tend to be on the, I'd say, lower end of the scale in terms of how intense they can be, but they are still tornadoes, and you certainly want to treat it that way, treat it seriously, getting into a lower floor, basement if you have it. If not, again, low floor and getting away from those windows. So again, tornado watch in effect there for southwest portions of Florida. And you can see this is an area that does have Torcon values, 2s and 3s here for us. That is in place, including Sarasota, Fort Myers, the Naples area. And even as we start to work our way a bit farther to the east, crossing the peninsula off towards the east coast, Cocoa Beach, Vero Beach, also dealing with Torcon values at this point, right around 2. So lower end of the scale, but it's on the scale, so that opportunity and the risk is there for us. And we always tend to look at that area here that's on sort of the right front region of our tropical system. So there is Eta, and it's right in this zone that we look for the greatest chance for those tornadoes to try to spin up. And one of the reasons why is what is taking place in that quadrant of the system. Look at the winds and where they're going from. Basically, at the surface, moving from the southeast. But as you start to work your way upstairs, go up in elevation, well, those winds change direction out of a more southerly direction. So southerly direction, and they're going to be moving faster. So you have change in wind speed and change in wind direction. And this is also an area here, that right front quadrant, where you also have quite a bit of moisture that's in place as well. So a lot of the ingredients coming together for those storms to spin up. And that's what we are seeing right now. That's one of the biggest threats that we're seeing right now. And that'll continue as we work our way through the next several hours. So watch this area closely. We'll continue to update you on all of the warnings that do fire up. And if you are under a warning, again, seek shelter. That's what you want to be doing at this time. All right, Colleen, you've got a bit more on what we can expect in terms of how this will all time out for the rest of the day.
Yes, and Eta just continues to be quite the storm. The latest advisory coming in at the 1 o'clock hour here Eastern time takes it back down to a tropical storm with 70-mile-per-hour winds, still moving to the north-northeast at 10 miles per hour. So the question is, what can you expect in places like Tampa, Naples, Orlando, Jacksonville? The challenges are going to be different for some of you, so let's time this out, because regardless of a hurricane strength or a tropical storm strength, tropical system, you're still going to have the impacts of the rain, the storm surge, the flooding, also the wind, and then, of course, as Alex has been detailing out for us this afternoon, the severe weather threat. Here's a look at the path right now. As this continues to weaken, Eta is going to be ingesting a lot of dry air, but on the right side of this storm, where it's going to be moving into the Tampa Bay area, Spring Hill, Cedar Key, you're still going to have a lot of rain and that potential for severe weather. And then this is going to continue up into the northern parts of Florida through Gainesville and Jacksonville as we head through Thursday evening. So expect a landfall maybe early tomorrow morning, somewhere around Spring Hill. Now, here's a look at the future radar. We're going to specifically talk about the Tampa Bay area. You're going to see a lot of rainfall, 2 to 3 inches of rain as we continue through your Wednesday. It's just going to be on and off just around St. Petersburg, Clearwater, all the way down through Bradenton, as well as Sarasota. So a lot of rain is going to be on the way for you as this continues to roll through the afternoon. There's 7, 8, 9 o'clock, heavy rain coming through, especially as the center of Eta starts to get a little closer, moving on to shore. And then as those winds start to turn, as Eta starts to approach the coastline, you're really going to see that storm surge starting to rise in areas just around the Tampa Bay spot. So again, a lot of rain on the way, coupled with the storm surge. You're going to have some winds that last all the way through Thursday evening. And there's a look at Tampa as we continue through the overnight time frame. And then it's out of there. So it's going to be a different story this time tomorrow. Unfortunately, though, a lot of flooding on the way for some areas, especially into those urban spots where the water just has nowhere to go. Thankfully, though, Tampa, you've been pretty dry for 2020. You've had a deficit, so this is certainly going to make up for that. But hopefully, some of the ground at least will act a little more like a sponge and try to get some of this water down into the ground. Now, here's a look at the winds. Now, what I want you to see is right now they're offshore, okay? So we're not dealing too much of a storm surge in many of these areas. However, as I mentioned, Eta starts to move closer to the coastline. You can see these winds start to turn, and as they start to get more out of the south and also southwest, you're going to see this pushing a lot of water up across the coastlines here, just around Tampa Bay and the Sun Coast. So again, we will be dealing with a storm surge, and then even when the rain passes through, we're still going to have the winds. They're going to be pretty strong, up to around 50 miles an hour. Tropical storm force winds will continue. And then as we head into about Thursday afternoon, still pretty gusty at times. And then you'll finally start to see some of this relax as we head through your Thursday afternoon. So again, a different story as this continues to move into central Florida and then possibly even across the east coast of Florida as we talk about Amelia Island, Jacksonville, Ponte Vedra. So some areas that may see the effects of this later on Thursday. So much of the Sunshine State really needs to stay on alert as we head through the end of this week with those wind gusts. Now here's a look at Tampa. Wednesday evening all the way through Thursday night, you'll have those winds really picking up, especially late Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Tropical storm force winds and then 2 to 3 inches of rain to come. So, of course, it's all about Eta today. And Alex, we're tracking this very, very quickly and very closely. Here's one live look here. This is from Anna Maria Island, Florida. There you go. This is just around the Tampa Bay area and, wow, west of Bradenton. And look at that. We got a little bit of cloud cover there, a little bit of surf, but things are certainly going to be changing in the next 24 hours as Eta makes landfall just close by. Alex?
All right, thanks so much, Colleen. Indeed, giving you the very latest on what's going on with Eta, and now a tropical storm at this point. So hurricane hunters have been going through there, and they now indicate that Eta has weakened just a bit to now 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm. So no longer a hurricane as it moves on off towards the north-northeast at about 10 miles per hour. You see the central pressure has actually gone up a bit. It was at the last advisory 983, now up to 990. And so hence we are seeing that weakening trend. And we thought that that would take place here for us as there's a lot of dry air surrounding this thing, and we're going to start to see it encountering a bit more of the wind shear, those stronger winds coming in aloft. So the weakening trend continuing here for us. And unfortunately, the threat for more heavy rain, though, is still in place. So despite a weakening, still some gusty winds and some heavy rains. That's what we'll experience and what we are experiencing across west central portions of Florida at this point. Let's take a look at where this thing is headed. North and eastbound, that trend will continue as we head towards Thursday morning, maybe on 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Could be a little bit weaker. We'll have to wait and see. But nonetheless, still some gusty winds. That could certainly be enough to lead to some power outage problems, and then continuing to cross the state here as we get into the evening. Fast mover by the time we get to Thursday evening, essentially there right across the northeast part of the state, and then moving out into the Atlantic by Thursday night and certainly getting into Friday, zipping away off towards the north and the east. So it'll be quickly moving on through, and as it does so, behind it, conditions will move, really improve pretty quickly. Now, there are still hurricane watches that are in place here for us. Can't rule out the possibility of a stronger wind gust here and there. So those watches are still in place. As we look at the tropical storm warnings, they're around as well, from around the Cedar Key area, continuing south to just south of Port Charlotte, and even points inland. Tropical storm conditions are expected there as well. Ocala is a spot that could deal with that. And then you have tropical storm watches in the yellow. That extends towards even the East Coast, Daytona Beach in there. The possibility of tropical storm conditions can't be ruled out there. So we'll keep an eye on those locations, but a pretty decent bet, tropical storm conditions, anywhere you see that red showing up at this point. Again, the hurricane hunters, they've been rolling on through. You can see their sort of zigzag patterns as they've been trying to move through the center of this thing. And some of the winds that they've experienced and sampled, again, in the tropical storm force range maybe an hour or two ago, and still in that as well at this time, but certainly well south of that red line, which would indicate hurricane status. So again, it's now dropping below hurricane status, and it's now a tropical storm. But you can still see those gusty winds. Tampa seeing that right now. Those gusts are right around 26 miles per hour. Fort Myers gusting up over 30 at this point, and continuing down the line towards Naples, where you're seeing 24 mile per hour sustained winds with those gusts at 36. So again, strong gusty winds. That'll continue. But notice where all the worst weather is. Essentially on the east side, you get to the west side of this thing, there's not a whole lot. So once you get that center moving on by, yeah, we're going to see, again, conditions really start to improve in these areas as we head through the overnight hours and into Thursday, essentially from west, heading on off towards the east. Colleen?
And Alex, some of the areas here on the west coast of Florida, they have had a deficit of rain for 2020. So some of this rain hopefully will get soaked into the ground, but other spots like South Florida have had so much rain so far this year. They did not need any more to add to that surplus. And after weeks of rain, another 8 inches of rain from Eta had nowhere to drain. So, of course, it's flooding the neighborhood streets and some homes and businesses. So far this year, to put this into perspective, Fort Lauderdale has had just over 78.5 inches of rain. That's more than 6.5 feet, and it's more than 21 inches above average for this time of the year. Also, the flooding affecting other parts of Broward and Miami-Dade counties. Some areas got 18 inches of rain in just 48 hours. The standing water creating very dangerous driving conditions. There have been numerous reports of stranded drivers and rescue crews in Lauderhill. Also say that one driver was left in critical condition after their vehicle sank after driving into a canal Sunday night. Yeah, it's hard to see with those floodwaters. That's why you just turn around. You don't even want to mess with some of this. You don't know what's there, where it's going, what it's covering. And of course, much more of Florida, even in Key West, has seen a lot of rain, and the rain isn't going away anytime soon. Here's a live look at Key West, where in addition to the rain, there's also a wind advisory until 5 p.m. I know the Florida Keys are going, oh my gosh, give me a break, but they got steady 25-mile-per-hour winds out of the south. And those gusts also up to around 35 miles per hour. So a lot going on. Also taking a live look at Fort Myers. We're going to be watching for flooding in many areas. In Fort Myers, you're also one of them that's seeing a lot of rain after days of rain. So again, this is going to be one of the biggest factors that we're going to be dealing with, Alex, is just all the rain that Eta is bringing, but at least it is moving, and at least with that drier air on the western side, once this east side rolls through, we'll start to see a little bit of some clearing for some of these areas.
Yeah, that is certainly the hope here for us and what we are anticipating as we head on through tonight and into tomorrow. There, that shot showing you some of the flood issues there, and we could see more. Take a look at what we've got with Eta in Miami. And these records go all the way back to the 1800s. We saw nearly 6 inches of rain there in Miami. So far this year, it's been a wet one. We're talking over 82 inches of rain. It is now the 7th wettest year on record here for us. Current record 89.33. That was set back in 1959. So yeah, it's been a wet time here for us across parts of the Sunshine State, particularly the southern areas down in around Miami, and Eta certainly has not helped matters at all. Now, there's still the chance we could see some more flooding. Can't rule that out here across southeastern portions of the state, West Palm Beach down towards Homestead, but also as you work your way to the western areas as well, Everglades City up towards Fort Myers. We've seen the flooding already there. So yeah, those are areas that we're going to watch very, very closely as we see these bands continue to roll on through and bring us that opportunity. As I mentioned, again, southeastern part of the state has been relatively wet. Soil moisture showing you that. It's been a little drier in the southern tip towards the west coast and then moving northbound as well, a little drier. So those areas could maybe handle a little bit more rain in the drier spots than what you find in the southeastern areas. But you get too much too quickly, and anywhere you can see the flooding despite some of the preceding conditions. All right, let's work our way through the rest of our afternoon into the evening. There's your timestamp now, and mostly quiet here across South Florida, but that's not expected to continue as we head on through this evening. Could be looking at more bands driving on by and moving on through the southern areas here, bringing in some downpours. There could be some gusty winds accompanying that as well, but mostly just some downpours. That'll be with us through the morning hours as well, and continuing into Thursday, late afternoon into the evening. We should start to see things quieting down throughout the day, though, on Thursday here for us. So here's what we've got in Miami. Thursday, a few showers as well as storms. Can't rule out maybe a few lighter showers even as we get into the nighttime hours, but mostly drier times across Miami. Friday afternoon, we could see some storms popping up and into your and then some showers streaming on by once we get into your Friday overnight as those temperatures dip down into the 70s. Now, we mentioned how the threat for tornadoes exists, and we continue to deal with that. Here's another one here for us in Pinellas County. That includes the city of Palm Harbor until 1:45. So for about another 30 minutes dealing with that tornado warned storm as it's tracking on off towards the north and the west. And then the other one until 1:15 for Hillsborough and Pinellas County. If you're in any of those areas, now is the time to seek shelter.
People were afraid I was
We're watching America's most trusted TV news network,
We've got a severe weather threat. Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
the Weather Channel.
And welcome back to Weather Center Live. We are tracking Tropical Storm Eta that is approaching the western coast of Florida. And right now, one of the big stories is the rain, but also the severe weather, as we've had numerous tornado warnings throughout the morning and the afternoon, all the way from the Tampa Bay area into southern Florida. Now, some have just expired, but we still do have one active warning, tornado warning, that is just outside Tampa there and moving up to the kind of northwest around 40 miles per hour. This is for Pinellas County until 1:45 this afternoon. Now, these are very quick. When we talk about these spin ups, these are radar indicated right now, but they can happen extremely quickly and spin up and spin back down. And so again, please exercise caution. If you are in this red box, you need to seek shelter. You should have already been inside. I know it's Florida. Some of you want to get out on the waters. This is not the day to do it. We're going to have band after band of rain rolling through. Here's a look at, as we put on the velocity here, as you see those reds and greens from the radar, you can see if there's any bit of a spin. And so we see a couple little spins, but again, this is radar indicated, and these are so quick. Sometimes they're hard to detect, and they happen within just one radar scan. So here's a look at where it's going as it continues to move offshore. And that's another thing. Those water spouts could also be occurring as we head throughout the afternoon. So this is going to be a trend that we see for quite some time for areas of Tampa. And then this could stretch all the way into parts of central Florida, getting into the Orlando area as well. So of course, this western side of Florida here is under a tornado watch until 5 o'clock. This goes all the way from Tampa Bay down through Sarasota. Fort Myers, you are also included in this tornado watch, as well as Naples. And we have had some of those tornado warnings just down to the south there, just outside of portions of Miami and Fort Lauderdale, kind of in the center there. So those have since expired, but it just goes to show you the swath of the potential of severe weather as these bands of Eta start to roll onto shore. So unfortunately, a long way to go for much of Florida as we continue through this afternoon and then also even into tomorrow. So again, heads up, everyone. Most all of Florida here is going to be watching very closely as Eta continues to roll through. So again, a reminder that tornado watch continues until 5 o'clock this afternoon. And here's a look at the Torcon today, 2 and 3 on the scale there, especially a higher chance there for Fort Myers, Naples, Sarasota, getting up into Tampa. And then, as I mentioned earlier, also including the city of Orlando. So this stretches into the central part of Florida as well. And then even could stretch into the east coast around Cocoa Beach and Vero Beach. So again, no one's kind of excluded from this here in this swath of some severe weather, as well as the potential of flooding with these severe thunderstorms. So a lot to be talking about. And Alex, we have a long way to go as we continue through today and tomorrow.
We do. We sure do. Here's a look at how things are faring for us as we take a look into the Fort Myers area here. This is courtesy of WBBH. And yeah, you see the palm trees swaying a bit in that wind, but you also see the ponding on the road. And occasionally you see some cars driving through that water. We always recommend that is not the thing to do, not the safest thing here for us, even though they seem to be making their way through at this point. You just never know. So please, if you do encounter that, please find another route to take. Up around Tampa, you can see things looking a little angry in terms of the waters. We've seen gusts getting up around 20 miles per hour at this point, sustained winds at 10. We'll more than likely see those winds increase as we watch Eta get closer and closer and move on through, at least the core of the system. So downpours, gusty winds, and that's what we'll be talking about for the rest of the day. Still the issue with some storm surge in there as well. So even though we've seen this thing go from a hurricane down to a tropical storm, 75-mile-per-hour hurricane, 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm, yeah, the impacts are pretty much the same. So not much has changed despite that sort of downgrade when it goes from hurricane to a tropical storm at this point. So again, 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm, 990 millibars. That's the central pressure at this point. We've seen that come up from 983 from the last advisory, and it's moving to the northeast right around 10 miles per hour. And that general motion should continue here as we head on through the next several hours. But you notice what we're finding here, west central areas, quite a bit of rain that we're seeing moving on through, and even farther south, bands of rain trying to set up there as well. It's within those bands that you get those heavy downpours, the gusty winds, and occasionally you can get a brief spin up, a tornado or two. And we've seen a few warnings fire up out there for us over the last few hours. So that's an area that we'll be watching pretty closely as we work our way through the day. Watching for hurricane conditions. Still can't rule that out. Hurricane watches are in place, so there's still the possibility for hurricane conditions anywhere you see that orange showing up here for us. And then the tropical storm warnings are in place anywhere you see that red. Port Charlotte back up towards Cedar Key. And then in that yellow, which extends it towards the East Coast, tropical storm watches. So there is still the possibility for tropical storm conditions from the St. Augustine area back down towards even around Daytona Beach. So a lot of areas will be experiencing those gusty winds. Certainly enough for some of those winds to lead to some power outages. So that is something to be prepared for as we head on through tonight. In fact, let's take you through it. Forecast here showing it moving north and eastbound within the cone. By the time we get to tomorrow morning, maybe down to around a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm, maybe a little weaker. We'll see. Regardless, again, some strong and gusty winds to impact us. And then as it makes its way ashore, weakening starts to really happen very quickly by the evening, now down to around a 35-mile-per-hour system, and then zipping out into the middle of the Atlantic, the western portions of the Atlantic, and moving away from land. So that'll certainly be a much, much better scenario. Let's take you back now to Naples. Live look at things here for us. And of course, people are curious, checking things out there on the pier. Got to be careful, though. You notice the waters are looking pretty angry. We'll be watching more rain and wind throughout the day. Steady winds from Tropical Storm Eta stirring up a bit of a chop this morning. This video was shot at the Isle of Capri community, just south of Naples there in Florida. The winds at the time were steady at around 30 miles per hour. We had some gusts getting up to about 41. The chances for rain slowly diminishing throughout the week, with the sun not expected to make anything more than a brief appearance as we work to the weekend. So yeah, it's a bit of a grayish time with the wind. We've been dealing with the rain as well. We can blame Eta for a bit of that. Now, we still have issues when it comes to Eta. Again, a tropical storm at this point, but we do still have hurricane watches that are posted here for parts of west central Florida, because there is still the possibility we could see hurricane conditions. Can't rule that out. From around Cedar Key, continuing down towards the south through Tampa, all the way towards the south there for us. So again, hurricane watches indicating the possibility, doesn't mean it's going to happen, but the possibility for hurricane conditions. Then we start talking tropical storm conditions, and that is expected anywhere you see that red. From Port Charlotte back up towards Cedar Key and even inland a bit from Ocala down towards the Lakeland area, we could see some tropical storm force winds. Certainly can't rule that out. And then watches here extending off towards the east coast, because there is the possibility for tropical storm conditions there as well, as we watch Eta move in that general direction here off towards the north and the east through tonight and into tomorrow morning. In fact, here is that projected path as we work our way through the next 24 to 36 hours or so. There's the center, continuing to move north and eastbound. And notice by tomorrow morning, has those wind speeds coming down just a bit. We'll see if that matches what we will deal with tomorrow morning. Could be a little lower than that. We'll see. Otherwise, as it makes that landfall, again, sometime tonight into tomorrow, well, we will find it rapidly decreasing in strength. So that's certainly some good news. Still some gusty conditions even up towards Jacksonville, but much less than what we see for us at this time. Then it zips off towards the north and the east and essentially moves its way across the western parts of the Atlantic away from the lower 48. So that'll be a good scenario again as things will really start to improve throughout the day here on Thursday. All right, so there's the latest 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm as it moves north-northeastbound now at about 10 miles per hour. You can see where all the worst weather is at this point. Seems to be generally on the east side. You get towards the west side, and there's not a whole lot. You see a little swirl of clouds, but you don't see a whole lot of wet weather there. So once we really see the center move on through, anywhere west of that, we really start to see things really start to improve. Now, it'll still be a little breezy, but in terms of some heavy downpours, we think that'll be really starting to let up there. But for now, the eastern portion of the system is where we're finding the worst of the weather, and that's where we expect to continue as we head on through our day. Now, the hurricane hunters, they've been flying on through, and you can see what they've experienced over the last hour or so. Those winds are generally here, at least what they've experienced, just outside and just north of about 39 to 40 miles per hour, but nowhere near getting up to hurricane strength. So we'll see again what happens when we get the next advisory in a little bit later on today. For now, let's take a look at what we've got in terms of those current conditions. Tampa right now seeing 14-mile-per-hour sustained winds, but the gusts are getting up around 36, so close to dealing with tropical storm force gusts there in Tampa. Same around Fort Myers. You're seeing winds up around 21 miles per hour sustained with gusts at 33. Naples also looking at the gusts over 35 miles per hour with less wind around Key West. 16-mile-per-hour winds there for you, at least at this point. So again, we'll keep an eye on these areas. Gusty winds and some of those heavy downpours is what we'll experience. And Colleen, you've got a bit more on the tropical downpours that we can expect to experience.
Yes, and Alex, Florida isn't the only state getting downpours of tropical moisture. Squeezed between a high-pressure system in the Atlantic and an oncoming cold front, heavy rain is already falling across parts of the southeast and the mid-Atlantic with flood alerts active in the Carolinas and Virginia right now. And unfortunately, there is even more on the way of those gray skies and all the rain that's already coming down, even the threat of some severe thunderstorms. So first off, we do have a flood watch as well as flash flood watches posted for parts of the Carolinas, getting up into Virginia as well. And then, of course, you have to remember the topography of this area, the Appalachians, that could really help to enhance some of these downpours. Regardless of what Eta does, it's sending so much moisture in the direction of these states. And with that oncoming cold front, you got a lot of lift, and so that is the recipe for some very heavy rain. So through tomorrow morning, we do have that potential of flash flooding all the way from our nation's capital down through Charlotte and Raleigh, also into portions of Virginia, including Richmond. Those same areas that are going to be dealing with the potential of flash flooding also have the potential of some severe thunderstorms. So we're going to be watching that closely as we head into today as well as into tomorrow. So here's the setup. We have this front that yesterday and even today still talking about how cold it is behind it. We have all of the winter weather, and then ahead of it, we've had record high temperatures. So a very strong cold front tapping in to all of this tropical moisture. And so that's what you get. It spells rain. And already we have those green boxes there, and those are flash flood warnings in parts of North Carolina right now. Expecting to see some more as the day continues and even more in the days to come as downpours continue for the southeast and the mid-Atlantic. And then we'll also have more on what's happening in Florida and Eta next.
Well, this is what it looked like the first time Eta took aim on Florida. As the week began, South Florida and the Keys facing the winds and torrential rain from Eta. The area is still dealing with flooding after up to 1.5 feet of rainfall. Now we got places like Naples that are feeling the sting of Eta's second round. Eta sending tropical storm force winds toward southwest Florida as it churns there in the Gulf. You see some of the folks there gathered there on that pier. Curious, of course, as you would imagine, as the tropical system is just offshore there. You can see the water's looking a bit angry and chopped up. Fortunately, I don't think I see much anyone in the water. That's some good news. Don't want to be heading into that stuff because it could be a dangerous time. We do have a rip current risk in those areas. Don't want to be out in that mess. All right, let's talk about what we've got in terms of our alerts when it comes to our tropical storm. A hurricane watch, we still have that in place. And we do have a tropical storm with it when it comes to Eta in terms of what it's designated right now. But can't rule out the possibility for still some hurricane conditions to be felt here right along the west central coast of Florida. So still keep that in mind. There still could be some strong wind gusts that approach and get to maybe hurricane strength, although the likelihood of that starting to move downhill as this thing is moving north and eastbound. But we do still have tropical storm warnings here for us, so tropical storm conditions, that is expected here for us in those red zones. Port Charlotte, you're in there, Tampa as well, even inland towards the Ocala area, because even as this thing moves inland a bit, there's still going to be some strong winds to contend with there, and even off towards the east coast, here where we do have the tropical storm watches. Possibility for tropical storm conditions exists there as well. So Daytona Beach to St. Augustine, we'll have to watch things closely in your neck of the woods. So as we work our way through time, forecast, the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center, moving it off towards the northeast by tomorrow morning sometime. Maybe a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm, could be less than that. This thing is working with and dealing with a lot of dry air. The west side of it, we'll show you just in a second, the west side of this is almost void of any rain. So the weakening trend is here, and it should continue. So we'll see if it is still that strong by that point. And then as it moves its way inland, we'll continue to weaken very rapidly before zipping offshore and moving away as we head on into Thursday night and certainly getting into a Friday. All right, there's what it looks like. 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm moving north-northeast at 10 miles per hour. As I mentioned, again, all the worst weather seems to be right in this general zone on the east side of the circulation. You head on the west side, we forgot the clouds showing up. But outside of that, barely any rain out there for you. So again, the worst of the weather on the east, and that's what's expected to continue to take shape as we head on through the next 24 hours or so. But within those heavier downpours, that's exactly what you're seeing. Heavier rains, gusty winds, and we've seen some occasional tornado warnings firing up. That is a risk that we'll have to face as we work our way on through our day. Hurricane hunters, they've been flying on through. They continue to do so as well, sort of sampling what's going on with this thing. And essentially here you can see the wind speeds have generally been in that tropical storm range. Beyond that, though, we haven't seen it getting anywhere near the hurricane force, that 74-mile-per-hour range. So, again, that's one of the reasons why this thing was able to get downgraded now to a tropical storm. But where it was before as a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane and where it is now, the impacts, it's the same. There's not much difference here for us. We're still going to be talking some strong winds. They could knock out power. We're still going to be talking about the potential for some storm surge here on the West Coast. So big heads up. We're already seeing some strong winds gusting up over 30 from Tampa down towards Fort Myers and Naples in there as well. Colleen, you've got a bit more on what we can expect.
Yes, and parts of South Florida, Alex, are still trying to recover from what Eta did earlier this week. Heavy rain swamping places that just did not need it. Like Fort Lauderdale, before Eta arrived, okay, so that's why you're seeing this ending November 5th. Before the storm arrived, you already had a 21-inch rainfall surplus for the year. Now that surplus has bulged. It's close to 29 inches of rain. All of Eta's rain, of course, has the neighborhood struggling. Jen Carfagno shows us how people are coping in one hard-hit community.
Getting to work can mean getting wet.
I have 18 inches of water all the way around my house. I can't even move my truck.
The Melrose Park neighborhood, a working-class area of Fort Lauderdale, underwater. 80-year-old Evelyn Henry has lived in Melrose Park 3 decades. Eta pushing knee-deep floodwaters inside her house.
3 weeks ago, it was flooded, the water up to the door, but it didn't come inside the house like it is today.
The city deploying an army of vacuum trucks to suck up floodwaters and haul them away. But they did little to clear streets. Uber Eats driver Harmony Peterson can't deliver food. Her small sedan can't handle the high water.
It was good yesterday like it's good now, but then it started pouring again overnight, and you just can't call it.
Standing water, damaging vehicles. Marky White making repairs.
Water get in between electrical stuff, car won't start, jam engine, So I'm here as a rescue team right now.
And Fort Lauderdale was not the only one that saw just so much rain from Eta. Another place, Miami, they had about 6 inches of rain from Eta. For rain this year, they're over 82 inches, and that means it's the 7th wettest year on record for the city of Miami. The current record for the top slot was 1959, 89.33 inches of rain. So we still have a little ways to go for 2020. So we'll see how close we can get to those records. And more is on the way. And unfortunately, that means flood watches continue for much of South Florida and then now extend north as we continue to track Tropical Storm Eta right here on the Weather Channel. And welcome back, everyone. This is the hurricane hunters. Look at that view. This is what they see as they're flying through those tropical systems. And some of what we know about Eta is coming, of course, from the hurricane hunters, a very important part of the puzzle. And these are some of the flights they've been taking into Eta, both as it meandered slowly near Cuba and then moved closer to the coast of West Florida. And of course, it's taken just a loopy path. But they continue to fly into Eta, gathering data about the strength and condition of this tropical storm. And also, here's a live look from the ground now in Anna Maria Island, Florida, Barrier Island there as you just exit Tampa Bay. Right now, not too much going on. It's gray skies, a little bit of rain coming in. We have the rough surf, but certainly those conditions are going to worsen as we head through the rest of today and into tomorrow. And Alex, you have the latest on Eta, which we've been tracking ever since it developed around Halloween. It's been a while.
It has. Yeah, we were talking about this before the show, how long we've been dealing with this thing. And yes, since Halloween, which is just incredible. And we thought we would be talking about it even longer. heading through the weekend. Fortunately, it looks like it is going to take a path more towards the north and the east as opposed to meandering in the Gulf. And so we should be saying goodbye to this thing as we head into Friday here as it moves its way out into the western parts of the Atlantic, thankfully, right? All right, so here's the latest on Eta, 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm. If you're just joining us, it was a hurricane earlier today. It got up to that status briefly as a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane. It's now come back down to 70 as a tropical storm as it moves now to the north-northeast at 10 miles per hour. You can see where the center of the circulation is right in there, and all the nasty weather happening right now on the east side of the system, bringing with it some of those heavier downpours. We're also talking about having to deal with some of those gusty winds out there as well, and always the potential for isolated tornadoes. We've seen a few warnings fire up already this afternoon, and we could see more. Here's the forecast in terms of where it is headed and moving on off towards the north and the east. By the time we get to tomorrow morning, Thursday morning or so, maybe it's somewhere in this general zone as a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm, maybe even a little weaker than that. I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see that happening, but certainly once it makes that landfall, very quickly we'll see it rapidly really losing its steam and its punch, crossing the state and then exiting off the East Coast here as we head into Thursday night. Look at the computer models here. They're pretty much well aligned in where this thing's going to be going off towards the north and the east. Remember when it was down here, western Cuba, and we were looking at these computer models, there were a few taking it in that direction, some in that direction, others going that way, meandering a bit. It was all over the place, and so there was a lot of there was no confidence in terms of where this thing may be headed. Much more confident now it'll be heading north and eastbound as all those models are pretty much well aligned. All right, let's focus in on the alerts. Hurricane watches, they are still in place. You may be asking, why are there hurricane watches if this thing's just a tropical storm at this point? Well, because hurricane conditions are still possible. You can't rule it out here for us, so we still have to watch out for that here along the west central coast of Florida. Tropical storm warnings are in place as well. Anywhere you see that red showing up, tropical storm conditions are expected. And then the possibility for tropical storm conditions even extending off towards the East Coast. St. Augustine to Daytona may be dealing with that. And we mentioned that threat for tornadoes still in place. We do have a tornado watch here for you. Anywhere you see that red showing up, again, the western portions of Florida dealing with that until about 5 o'clock. It's within that zone where we have that risk. And a bit farther south, within one of those bands, you can see a warning is fired up. Now, this is a severe thunderstorm warning where the risk is going to be damaging wind, maybe in excess of 60 miles per hour. But even with that, we could see here, this is for Monroe County until 2:15. You can't rule out a brief tornado trying to spin up. It can happen at a moment's notice, so you have to be prepared for that. This is moving northbound at about 30 to 35 miles per hour. And of course, we'll continue to update you on any other warnings that do fire up. Colleen?
And Alex, I wish this was the only thing we're talking about. The tropics are still very active, though, and we have other areas that we're watching in the Atlantic as well as in the Caribbean. So first, there's Tropical Storm Eta, of course, tracking that as it's making its way closer and closer to the Florida coastline again. And then we have Invest 98L in the central Caribbean, and then, of course, Tropical Storm Theta that is well out into the central Atlantic. So first off, Tropical Storm Theta, it's been moving between the Azores and the Canary Islands around 60 miles an hour with those winds, and there it goes, continuing to track east, posing some problems potentially to some of the islands, then closer to Europe and the western side of Africa. Now, closer to home, we do have a cluster of thunderstorms as a tropical wave is moving from the eastern Caribbean and then slowly moving into some more conducive development area. And so we already have a flash flood watch out for Puerto Rico, also the BVIs, as well as the U.S. Virgin Islands. So there have already been some flash flooding in the areas, of course, the mountainous terrain of Puerto Rico as well. And so this is an area we're going to be watching very closely. Regardless of what it may develop into, it's still going to bring some very flooding rains to these islands. 80% chance of developing into a tropical system in the next 5 days, and potentially could bring even more rain to Central America, which certainly does not need it after Eta. So we're going to be tracking all this in the tropics, and of course, all eyes on Eta as it nears Florida. We'll have more on the track and what to expect in the coming days next.
Hurricane Eta taking aim at Florida's Gulf Coast this afternoon. Now, the storm already made a landfall in Florida once, late Sunday night in the Florida Keys. Now it's hooking back around for a second round. This is a live look at how things are faring for us in Tampa, which is under a hurricane watch as Eta closes in on the Sunshine State. You see the waters certainly getting a little or looking a bit more angry. Look at some of the alerts that are in place. Tropical storm warnings are in place for us right now. Anywhere you see that red showing up, Cedar Key, Ocala, back down towards the Port Charlotte area. And then even on the East Coast a little bit there, a few counties that do have tropical storm watches, as there is at least the potential for tropical storm conditions to impact those areas. Colleen?
As you exit Tampa Bay, you'll run into this barrier island. This is Anna Maria Island, also under that tropical storm warning, just west of Bradenton. And you can see that we have the clouds in place. A little bit of that angry surf, but certainly we're going to see conditions deteriorate as we continue through the rest of today and tomorrow. Already some gusts there at the island of over 40 miles per hour. So let's get you caught up on what you need to know as this storm closes in. Meteorologist Alex Wallace is in the lab with the latest. Alex.
All right, thanks, Colleen. Yeah, watching this thing now as a tropical storm, 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm moving here just off the west coast, where it is in relation to Tampa. It's about 115 miles or so to the southwest of the city there as it moves northeastbound at 10 miles per hour. There's all the worst of the weather, though. You can kind of pick it out. Basically, on the east side of the circulation, you head on the west side, and you almost get into rain-free areas for the most part. I mean, there may be a few showers, light showers here and there, but for the most part, just a few clouds and some lighter showers. Otherwise, all the worst of the weather is taking place in this zone here. That's where we're finding some of the stronger winds. That's where we're finding the heavier downpours. That's also where we're finding that risk for a few isolated tornadoes. And we've seen a few warnings fire up here this afternoon, and we could certainly see a few more as we work our way on through the rest of our day. So we'll keep an eye on that. Otherwise, watching the path, again, moving north and eastbound as we head on into tonight and tomorrow morning. There it is, the location somewhere in this zone as a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm. And I wouldn't be surprised if it were maybe a little bit less than that in terms of the strength. As again, though, there's a lot of dry air that is starting to work its way on through. We showed you that, again, that west side that is almost void of any kind of wet weather. So a lot of dry air, which is going to be working on this as it moves north and eastbound. So that could certainly bring down those wind speeds, but still gusty enough as it moves on through to bring some issues when it comes to power outage problems and still the risk for rain. The rain's going to be coming down heavily at times out there for us. All right. Hurricane watches, they are in place here for us. And again, the reason why is because you can't rule out maybe a hurricane force wind gust coming on into these areas here. So there's still that potential. Not a great potential, but a potential is there. So we don't want to let our guard down here, west central portions of the state, for that possibility for hurricane conditions. But more likely would be tropical storm conditions here for us to be impacting us. Anywhere you see that red, Cedar Key, we talked about you, down towards Tampa, the Lakeland area, all the way down towards Port Charlotte as well. And then here on the East Coast, where our tropical storm watches are in place, where we can't rule out the possibility for tropical storm conditions there. So even as this thing crosses the state, there'll still be some gusty winds to deal with. Now, the hurricane hunters, they've been flying on through, moving its way through the center of the circulation. And you can see what they've experienced over the last few hours. Those winds generally in tropical storm force range, not even getting close to the hurricane force here. So that is some good news. We're continuing to see this thing moving in the downward trend in terms of its strength. But still some impacts. Right now, Tampa seeing those winds at about 15 miles per hour sustained. Gusts close to 30 at times. That's gotten up over 30. We see that in Fort Myers. You're gusting up over 30 and close to 40 now, Naples. So we're already close to tropical storm force in Naples in terms of those gusts, while Key West is seeing 20-mile-per-hour winds with gusts now approaching and getting right around 25 miles per hour. So that's really going to be the story here for us as we head through the day. Winds, gusty, some heavy downpours here and there, and we have to watch out for some of those isolated tornadoes as well. Those are just a few of the risks. Colleen, you've got a bit more on what we could experience there in the waters. Surge potential and, of course, the flood risk is there for us, too.
Yes, so much to talk about. Even as Eta may start to be weakening, it certainly is still going to have a big impact here for the western coast of Florida, as well as even into central Florida. And then folks on the eastern side of the state also need to stay with some high alert as this tropical system continues to roll through. Right now, we do have flash flood watches and flood watches posted there all the way from Fort Myers up through Cedar Key, Tampa included in this, as we could have a couple inches of rain very quickly on top of all the rain that's already fallen. And we're going to see a good 12-hour period here from now all the way through tonight and then even into tomorrow morning that we're just going to see on and off showers and thunderstorms throughout the afternoon, evening, and overnight time frame. You can already see all these bands rolling through as Eta continues to get closer and closer to the coastline. The good news is, though, as dry air is moving into this storm, the western side, there's not much going on. So once you get through this, we're going to see a big improvement with the weather as we head through the latter part of Thursday morning and then into Thursday afternoon. However, this morning and this afternoon, we've been dealing with tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings. Right now, no tornado warnings that are active, but we do have active severe thunderstorm warnings for 60-mile-an-hour winds just outside of Everglades City. This is for the county of mainland Monroe until 2:15. And then as we get a little bit to the north here, we also have another one for Collier, mainland Monroe, the northern part of that county, as well as Miami-Dade until 2:15. So again, goes to show you that all these bands can pose a threat. May not be a tornado threat, but you can still get those straight line winds, 60 miles an hour, as these bands are racing to the north. And this is a look at the future radar as we continue to track Eta, as it is likely to move onto shore by tomorrow morning. And then those bands extend not just around the Tampa Bay area and north, but all the way down even into the southern parts of Florida as well. So they are not out of the woods yet to see some shower and thunderstorm activity. And then this will cross the state, exiting out as we head through Thursday afternoon with some drier conditions, finally moving in for the Sunshine State. When it's all said and done, though, this is the rain still to come. We could have upwards of 3 to 5 inches in and around Tampa Bay, with an additional 2 to 3 inches for southern Florida. And these are areas that have already seen upwards of a foot of rain, if not more, especially around West Palm Beach down through Miami and Fort Lauderdale. So again, a lot of rain, and unfortunately that is going to continue to aggravate those flooding problems. Also, we're going to be watching for the storm surge. Storm surge warnings continue all the way from Cedar Key to Fort Myers. So we'll be watching that closely, especially as those winds start to push that water up against the shore as Eta gets a little closer to the shoreline, because right now all the winds are offshore. So we are not looking at a storm surge threat yet. But then as that center starts to cross over, we'll have those winds pushing the water up against the beaches. And so that means anywhere from 3 to 5 foot with a rise there in Sarasota, as well as about a 2 to 4 foot rise from Horseshoe Beach all the way down through Tampa Bay. And again, another thing that really continues to pose a threat with the storm surge is the tides, whether it's high tide or low tide. So we're going to be watching that as well. Also, Alex, again, still posing a severe threat. Eta has those warnings going even right now.
Absolutely. That is one of the other risks that we'll be facing here. And we certainly got to be aware of that in places like Tampa as well as Naples. Tornado condition index, we got Torcon values in the 3 range, meaning there's about certainly a decent shot at dealing with a few isolated tornadoes in some of these areas here. Not a huge risk, but it's not a zero risk either. So heed the warnings as they do come out. Now, Colleen talked about those severe warnings in the southwest part of the state there, that including parts of Monroe, Collier County, Dade in there as well. We'll watch those areas, gusty potential winds in excess of 60 miles per hour. There's the center of the circulation. And always the concern when we get these tropical systems moving closer to land, it's in these bands that set up that you have that risk for storms to fire up some of those isolated tornadoes. Now, they tend to be on the brief side of the scale, very quick spin-ups. They can happen very, very fast, though. And they tend to be, again, on the weaker side of the scale. So I say the lower end of the scale in terms of the intensity. But, again, they are tornadoes, so you have to take them seriously. Any warnings that do come out, please heed them and get into your safe zone. It's really anywhere you see that red, tornado watch is in effect. And so conditions are favorable for tornadoes to spin up in those areas. That watch is here until about 5 o'clock, so working our way towards the rush hour. The next couple of hours, we'll potentially see that maybe get extended a bit more even as we get into this evening. We'll certainly watch for that. But otherwise, there's the area of most concern for today in terms of the tornado risk. There are the Torcon values right in that 2 and 3 range. And essentially, it's really in that northeastern part of the system here, that right front quadrant. That's where you see conditions that are most favorable for tornadoes to get going. Reasons why? Well, let's take a look at how those winds are faring. Essentially, at the surface, they're coming in out of a more southeasterly direction. But as you start to work your way upstairs, you move away from the surface. They're coming in faster and out of a different direction, more of a southerly direction here, showing up here in that zone. So you've got a lot of that turning of the wind. The wind speed is changing and the wind direction is changing as you head up in altitude. So with that being the case, a lot of moisture in this area as well. We've got the ingredients for tornadoes to try to spin up. So that's the area that we'll be most concerned with, and we'll certainly be watching that very, very closely, along with just the general winds associated with this system as well. Those will be creeping up as we work our way through time. Right now, gusts are close to 30 in Tampa. They are up over 30 in Fort Myers, down even towards Key West. Again, the center of the circulation way up here, you're finding gusts up around 25 miles per hour. So we've got windy conditions all across the central and south areas here, and we'll continue to deal with that as we head on through the rest of tonight. Looking at when those tropical storm force winds will set on in, and we're already getting very close to that range in a few locations, at least in terms of some of those gusts. Again, as we head on through this afternoon into the evening and then heading into Thursday morning, maybe even around Orlando could see tropical storm force winds try to sneak their way on in tomorrow morning. So just be prepared for that. And when you start talking winds like that, there is the potential for power outages. So that is a risk that we'll certainly be following. In fact, let's take you through the rest of this afternoon. There's the path moving north and eastbound. There are some of the stronger winds associated with it. Again, gusts that could certainly be in the 40, 50, 60 mile an hour range. And then continuing as it makes that landfall sometime late tonight into tomorrow. This thing's rapidly going to see those wind speeds come down. It's really going to weaken very, very quickly. So that's certainly a good scenario before it emerges back over the Atlantic and then starts to pull farther and farther away. So watching for those winds, 40, 50 mile per hour winds possible there for us around Tampa, maybe even up to 60 as we head in through the overnight hours. Again, these are some of the wind gusts that could be realized. Stronger winds continuing up around Melbourne, 25 to 30 mile per hour winds tomorrow morning. And then again, this thing will rapidly weaken. So the strongest wind gusts will be nowhere near what we see as we work our way through this evening. In fact, by tomorrow night, the winds are pretty much gone, none. Jacksonville down towards Fort Myers in terms of the gusts, maybe a 15 to 20 mile an hour wind showing up in Melbourne. So certainly a rapid improvement, Colleen, is expected as we start to work our way certainly through the day tomorrow.
And Alex, let's time out for some of these cities because I know the big question is, what can you expect from Eta and when will you deal with these problems from Eta? It's the question that is top of mind right now for places like Tampa, Naples, Orlando, Jacksonville. As Alex just detailed out, even folks in Orlando, Mickey's going to be hanging on. We got some strong winds for you, even as this tropical system continues to roll through the Sunshine State. So let's time it out. First off, let's start with the track and where it's headed. So, of course, this track has been all over the place. I mean, we've been tracking Eta since it started on Halloween, okay? So this has been a long ride for Eta, but there is the current track. This does look likely that it will be rolling through late tonight into tomorrow morning, making its way for a second landfall in Florida, just between about Cedar Key and Spring Hill, and then continue up through Gainesville and Jacksonville, and then move into the Atlantic. So let's talk about the future radar for the Tampa Bay area. You're gonna see a lot of rain, 2 to 3 inches of rain possible on top of what you've already had, really starting to pick up in intensity as we head through tonight. You can see all those oranges, the yellows on your screen, but it doesn't last too long because by late morning into the afternoon, you start to clear up very quickly. Still may be a little gusty at times throughout tomorrow afternoon, but the bulk of the rain, as well as the potential storm surge, that will all be over as Eta continues to roll into Central Florida and then eventually, as I mentioned, into the Atlantic. So right now, most of the winds are offshore, so we're not seeing too much in the way of storm surge yet. But again, even as we head through Wednesday, I mean, you're looking at winds 50, 60 miles an hour in Tampa, St. Petersburg, Apollo Beach, down through Sarasota. And then by tomorrow morning, those winds are onshore. So that's why we are concerned with a little bit of storm surge for the Tampa Bay area. But then these winds do start to lighten up right after we go through about lunchtime. And so conditions are going to be a bit different by tomorrow night. But again, Alex, really some of the biggest stories have been the rainfall, especially for South Florida, a place that really doesn't need it.
Yeah, you said it. If there's really one location that does need it, that is there in South Florida. After weeks of rain, another 8 inches of that rain from Eta. And it had just nowhere to drain, flooding neighborhoods, streets, and some homes and businesses. So far this year, Fort Lauderdale has just over 78.5 inches of rain. That is more than 6.5 feet and more than 21 inches above average for this time of the year. So we're really overdoing it here. And again, any additional rainfall just makes matters worse. Now, the flooding affecting other parts of Broward and Miami-Dade counties. Some areas got 18 inches of rain in just 48 hours. I mean, that's a ton of rain in a couple of days. The standing water creating some very dangerous driving conditions. There have been numerous reports of stranded drivers and rescue crews in Lauderhill. So say that one driver was left in critical condition after their vehicle sank after driving into a canal on Sunday night. And the rain, well, not going anywhere here for us anytime soon as we take you into Key West, where in addition to the rain, there is a wind advisory until about 5 o'clock, a steady 25 mile per hour wind, gusts up to 35 miles per hour, all the potential risk here for us as folks are there at that southernmost point. All right, let's take a look at what we've seen there in South Florida with this rain. Miami is a spot that has also seen its fair share of rain, close to 6 inches showing up here for us from Eta. Now, the rainfall this year, 82.21 inches of rainfall. It's now the 7th wettest year on record. The current record is 89.33. That goes back to 1959. And there's still that risk for some more rain to move right on in. And with that being the case, we'll have to watch for flooding. There are flood watches that are up for southeastern parts of the state, and as you work your way towards the western areas as well. It's in that southeastern part where, we've got soil moisture where we're wet in those spots, again, because of some of the rains we've seen this year. Not so wet west coast towards the northern areas, but even in those spots, you get some heavy rain coming down pretty quickly. That could certainly lead to some problems in those areas. So throughout the rest of the day, we'll watch some of these showers moving on by, those bands of rain coming on by, and that could certainly lead to some issues here as we work our way on through the rest of this afternoon and into tonight. Plenty more to come when it comes to Eta. We follow the track, what we can expect in terms of the impacts over the next day. New video here from St. Petersburg, Florida. Water crashing here over the seawall. This thanks to Tropical Storm Eta moving in here, closing in and closing in. And we thought we'd see some angry waters, and that's exactly what we are dealing with right now, along with, of course, heavy downpours and some of those gusty winds. You don't want to be trying to get out there in the boats with that, for sure. All right, let's get you to what things are looking like right now. In Tampa, a lot of gray skies. You still see that water lapping in and crashing in here along the wall there for you. And again, tropical storm conditions. That's what we are expecting here as we work our way on through this evening and into at least the early part of tomorrow before we start to see things really improve as it pulls away throughout the day tomorrow. So we'll be watching it closely again right now as the tropical storm. 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm with its central pressure at 990 millibars. We've seen that come up from the last advisory. It was 983, so oftentimes you see pressures rise. That means the system is starting to lose a little bit of its punch. And so that did exactly what happened. It moved from a hurricane, a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane now, to a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm, and we may be talking about that continuing, that weakening trend as we head on down the road. We'll see, but for now, that's what it looks like. Moving north-northeastbound at about 10 miles per hour, and there you can see where some of the worst of the weather is associated with it. Essentially, it's on the east side. You work your way onto the west side of this thing, and there's barely any rain on that side. There's just been a ton of dry air that's been around this thing for some time, and a lot of that is now beginning to work its way into the system. And so that west side right now feeling the biggest impacts from that. And if we can see more of that taking over the rest of the circulation, we may continue to see further weakening there. So that is certainly the hope. But for now, still expecting some strong winds as well as some of those heavy downpours. And we'll have to watch out for, as we've seen, isolated tornadoes trying to spin up. Some of those warnings have been coming up here during the afternoon hours. All right, let's take a look at where the watches are. Hurricane watches are still up, and you may be asking, why are there hurricane watches? We have a tropical storm, not a hurricane. Well, there is still the risk, the possibility, the potential for hurricane conditions to be felt in these areas. So it's not likely at this point, but you don't want to completely let off your guard and let down your guard. There is still that risk. Tropical storm conditions, that would be more likely here for us. Tropical storm watches, they are in place, or say warnings, I should say, they are in place here along the western portions of Florida. But even as you work your way east, tropical storm watches. Possibility for tropical storm conditions there from St. Augustine down towards Daytona Beach. So even farther inland and towards the east coast, we can't rule out some strong wind issues there. So we'll watch it move north and eastbound. That's the projected forecast and the path moving in that general direction. Notice the wind speeds by tomorrow morning, 65 miles per hour. Now, maybe a little bit weaker than that. That is a possibility. We will certainly and can hope for that to take place, but I would be prepared for 65-mile-per-hour winds moving on in here as we move into tomorrow morning. Now, once it moves ashore, rapid weakening is expected. So by the time we work through the day and into the evening, it should be beginning to merge off the East Coast, but again, in a much more weakened state and continuing to pull away. So that, again, would be a much better scenario as conditions start to improve. And pretty confident that that is going to happen. As you look at the forecast models, those lines, those yellow lines, those are all different models, and they're pretty well in agreement in where this thing will be headed. Far cry from what it looked like yesterday around this time, a little bit before that, where they were all over the place. Some taking it west, some taking it north, some to the northeast. Now they're aligned, so much more confident in where it will be headed. Hurricane hunters, they've been flying around. It looks like they are now beginning to maybe exit and come back. But for the most part, they've been experiencing and recording mostly tropical storm force winds, nothing close to hurricane force. So that, again, Colleen, a good scenario.
Yes, and Alex, earlier we did speak to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who provided an overview of the situation from his perspective and the latest on preparations to respond after Eta makes landfall.
There are wind gusts that are very strong, could even reach hurricane force. We also anticipate, we're already seeing in southwest Florida, some of the storm surge and the rising water levels. So people need to be on the lookout for flash flooding. Don't be venturing out into big areas of water. You could have power lines down. You're also looking at a landfall now potentially north of Tampa Bay area in the Hernando County region. Even a tropical storm will likely lead to vegetation and some other things with trees. So that's going to be an issue as well. We have not had major power outages yet, but we obviously think that that is going to happen. It may not be massive outages in any one spot, but it's going to be over a large portion of that west coast where there'll probably be some. So we're working hard to have supplies in there as soon as it's safe. And then we're also working with the utilities to make sure that they're in to be able to get the restoration. If you look at, I mean, you guys have been following this track. It's really been a crazy storm to watch. Yesterday morning when I got briefed, it was looking at a northern Gulf Coast impact in the Pensacola, Alabama, Mississippi region. And then obviously that's gotten revised now. We're looking at north of Tampa Bay. So folks are prepared. There are not any massive evacuations been ordered, but in some of the local communities, some low-lying areas in Manatee County and Hernando County, you are seeing voluntary evacuations. Not a lot of shelters have needed to be open yet, but if those are, we're obviously there to be able to help with any types of supplies that they need.
Wow, Eta has been quite the storm for Florida and continues to be so. More on this in our never-ending hurricane season, it seems, coming up right after this.
How about some new video into us now in southwest Florida? Drivers gassing up. Yeah, Eta is the reason why. Parts of southwest Florida already seeing tropical storm force wind gusts at times as Eta spins there in the western parts of the Gulf. Florida's governor is